The Communication Forensics and Cybercrimes Division received call data records from Flow. Last Monday, the prosecution's seventh witness, who is a lead investigator in the case, testified that the police had challenges obtaining the telephone data from the service providers and is still awaiting the requested information. According to the police witness, the records relate to phones that were collected from several of the 33 defendants and the 3 cellular phones that were used by a former gang member to secretly record the conversation of alleged members of the gang, including reputed leader Andre Blackman Bryan.
Several phones were seized from the defendants in addition to 3 other phones used by a former gang member to secretly record conversations with other alleged members of the gang. The court learned that Flow has since provided the records requested, however data from Digicel remains absent. It is the prosecution's intention to use the court's power to retrieve the data. Meanwhile, the work of the police witness was subjected to scrutiny by the defense. It was revealed that the former gang member turned Crown witness was removed from an active crime scene before the investigators from the Independent Commission of Investigation, INDECOM, arrived. The incident occurred on January 25, 2019 at a section of Spanish Town where 2 alleged members of the gang reportedly engaged the police in a shootout and both gangsters were fatally shot. Additionally, INDECOM was not made aware that the former gang member was present during the incident as he was whisked away by the lead investigator. Defense attorney Denise Hinson questioned why the informant was removed from the scene before INDECOM had access to interview him. The police witness's response was that if he was asked to make the former gang member available, then he would. Another attorney suggested that the police witness has been taking exhibits from other cases and including them in the trial. Asked if he has ever given the former gang member money, the detective responded, quote, "Yes, he's a man that was under my care," end quote. He says he gave him money to purchase phone cards. "I am not sure. I don't think so. Maybe, and I can't recall," are just some of the ambiguous answers that were given to several questions posed to the detective by the defense. One of the defendants was heard mumbling that the police's investigation is sloppy. A new witness for the prosecution is expected to take the stand on Tuesday. On Tuesday, 2 more police witnesses were called to the stand to give in detail their account of identification parades they conducted of alleged members of the Wandana Klansman gang, as well as to identify the accused men in court. Several of the defendants and their lawyers submitted written agreements to the court accepting the evidence of identification, to include the alleged gang leader Andre Blackman Bryan. Bryan, at the time of his designated identification parade in July 2019, refused to be physically identified on the basis that his attorney was not present. The police had to obtain his passport and conducted a picture identification instead. The agreements were read into the court's records. Additionally, oral agreements were also made by other attorneys. Meanwhile, 2 civilian witnesses took the stand to further establish the murder of a man identified as Dooley. Dooley was allegedly shot and killed by members on trial on August 15, 2017, along Red Hills Road in St. Andrew. According to the first civilian witness, he and the deceased, who was his co-worker at the time, were walking side by side to a bus stop after they left work that day. The civilian heard loud explosions, after which he saw his co-worker on the ground. The witness says he ran back towards the building where they worked and informed their supervisor of what happened. The second civilian witness, the supervisor at the time, confirmed the incident, saying she never saw the employee after that day. Both witnesses were shown the photograph of Dooley. The supervisor identified the deceased as Demaine Forrester. The trial will reconvene on Wednesday at 10 a.m. It's the first time a relative of a victim allegedly killed by members of the Wandana Klansman gang has taken the stand since the start of the trial. The relative testified how she got the news. She received a call while at home that her family member, known to the court as Outlaw, was gunned down while plying his trade in a community in Spanish Town on November 2, 2017. But when she arrived on the scene, she says the body was already removed. She later told the court her relative's name in full, Patrick Tullo. The witness says her relative's funeral was held in December that same year. He was buried at the Dovecot Memorial Park, also in Spanish Town. Chief Justice Brian Sykes questioned if she had with her a picture of her relative, which she then showed on her phone, a picture of the deceased man. The alleged gang leader Andre Blackman Bryan, Tariq James, Owen Armsby, and Carl Beach are all charged with the murder of Outlaw. Meanwhile, several more written agreements to identification parades of the accused were read into evidence. All the ID parades were conducted in 2019. Additionally, another detective was called to the stand on Wednesday. The police witness was in the process of recounting an incident that took place on January 25 when the court adjourned. Brian and 32 others are being tried for being part of a criminal organization on a 25-count indictment to include varying charges of murder, conspiracy to murder, and arson. The trial will reconvene on Thursday.
Prosecution in the Guangdong Klansman trial today gave snapshots of a few incidents and intelligence operations he was part of at different times in 2019. He outlined his dramatic encounters with some defendants.
A hooded figure with a gun at the ready peered from behind a building, seemingly observing men who were sitting by a wall. A party was in session at the intersection of Martin Street and Manchester Street in St. Catherine. Looking on was a detective sergeant from Seatock working that night to prevent a Klansman shooting spree. Driving away from the hooded figure, he heard gunshot-like explosions in the distance. The police witness continued to outline the events of January 25, 2019. Acting on intelligence provided by the second witness, the detective was heading to Martin Street. Speeding toward him was a brown Axio, which ended up in Port Henderson, Portmore. The police witness drove into the aftermath of what is said to have been a shootout between gang members and police, where two gangsters were shot. One was lying face down in nearby bushes, the other slumped in the front seat of the car that was riddled with bullet holes. Jumping ahead to June 28, 2019, the prosecution led the witness to detail the arrest of defendant Fabian Johnson, also called Crooks. As he was being whisked away, Johnson explained that he was an entertainer who parred with the likes of iOctane. By then, a crowd of men started to gather and hurled insults at the officers, calling them Tesha Miller police, and shouted Andre Bryan for life. When brought into custody, Johnson asked to telephone Big Woman Stephanie Christie, who spoke with a detective. The arrest of Stephanie Christie took place on the morning of June 30 that same year, as she was making preparations for the ordination of her husband. She was in a churchyard in the Nightville district of St. Thomas, where other people were setting up for the event. As she was being arrested by the witness and a fellow officer, she begged them not to take her into custody. When told she was suspected to be involved in a gang, she responded, "Me? Which gang?" In court on Thursday, the police witness identified defendant Jermaine Robinson. Court resumes on Monday at 10 a.m.